Good morning, everyone. Yes, I woke up like this. I didn't get ready just for this video. And what are my kids doing? Well, Violet's not watching Play-Doh video after Play-Doh video on YouTube. She's eating an organic breakfast with buckwheat and rye. It's her favorite, isn't it, honey? Yeah, and with fresh farmer's market peaches. That's just how we do things. So today we are going to be talking about epidurals. Yay or nay? Do I get one? Do I not get one? Here's the deal. Epidurals, do I get one? It's kind of a hot topic. I feel like when you tell people that you're going to do natural birth, they're like, oh, just wait till you get in that room. You're really going to regret it. So I've done both. I've had an unmedicated birth experience and an epidural birth experience. And epidurals are popular for a reason. They are better than older uses of medicine, anesthesia or whatever. I'm not a doctor. Because they allow you to be conscious and present during the labor, but without feeling the sensations of labor, typically just pressure, but nothing else, no pain. Or they are supposed to. I've talked to a lot of women and it's almost like a half and half. Like some women say, oh, my epidural worked great, I loved it. And some say, it didn't work, it wore off, and So there's all of that. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about the true but not so talked about facts or risks of epidurals. And before we do any of that, we need to kind of understand the labor process a little bit better. I'm not very well equipped to do it, but Professor Berthy is. Buckle up your cervix because we're about to take a ride on the information highway. Oh yes, thank you, Birth and the Bees, for turning over to me. I'm now going to talk about birth, but for the sake of English people, I switched to my English accent. Okay, so this is a chalkboard. This is the uterus with the baby inside, not drawn to scale, or potentially drawn to scale. Drawn by me. What I've noticed in all of my readings is that we want to be able to put numbers on birth, numbers on nature. It's great that we're doing that, so there's something to measure things by, but we also have to remember to not take it 100% so seriously. There are technically 4 stages of labor and birth: early labor, active labor, birth, and the afterbirth. Today we're just going to be talking about the 2 stages of the labor process. 1, early labor, and 2, active labor. Early labor is when your cervix begins to gradually dilate. That means open up. This is the cervix. This is the opening at the top, and your mucus plug is stored right there. And this, in early labor, this begins to open up, and this also begins to efface or thin out. The cervical opening needs to tilt. In early labor, you need to alternate between rest and activity and drink plenty of fluids. And then in active labor, it begins to dilate more rapidly, and you have contractions, or I like to call them uterine surges, that are stronger and longer and closer together. They average around 3 minutes apart at this time, and you will notice that you kind of become more focused, less haha, this is exciting, and a little more turned in. Now, this is when you really need to listen to your body and develop a rhythm to work with it instead of work against it. In this stage, changing positions not only helps you stay more comfortable, but also enhances the progress and helps things move more quickly. The last part of active labor, what we refer to as transition. This is where it finishes dilating or opening and effacing. The contractions are more powerful and very efficient. Some of the signposts of this is you become very nauseous, you go hot and cold, you get really, really sweaty, and then you're really, really shaky. Your legs tremble because of the natural hormones working through your body. You might feel like, I gotta get out of here, I cannot do this, I cannot do this. And you're gonna be feeling a lot of pressure as the head bears down. The movement reduces the pressure that you may be feeling, but it continues to allow the baby's head to bear down and for you to work with gravity. So that's what I wanted to cover. Oh, thanks, Professor. That was a lot of really great information. And we know that you only majored in theater and not med school, so hopefully people will give you some grace when it comes to that. So movement and changing positions is so important in labor, like we talked about, like Professor talked about. Let's say you are in labor, you are in early labor or active labor, you decide it's time to go to the hospital. You get there and you are in pain. First of all, yes, To me, it is painful. It reminds me of a menstrual cycle ramped up. It's kind of like if you're on your period, but just ramp it up a couple notches. That's kind of what labor reminded me of. So yeah, you're feeling some intense sensations. However, you don't need to be scared. We just start changing our mindset about birth. I think our experience will be so much better. It's gonna be okay. This is very normal and this is very natural. Just changing your thought process. I'm gonna be okay. My body knows what it's doing. My baby knows what it's doing. I'm going to work with it and not work against it. That has to start when you're pregnant. That has to start at your own birth. You need to start learning about the body and its natural functions and its ability to heal. Positive birth affirmations at the beginning of your pregnancy can be really helpful too, because then you're just kind of changing the way you think. It's not going to be like, oh, I'm doing 2 weeks. I need to start thinking about this differently. No, it needs to start soon. So typically what happens is that girls show up to the hospital in some stage of labor and they get an epidural. Now, even if they're in the early stage of labor, like around 4 centimeters, they'll still get one. Then they never move again. They get an epidural and they lay in the bed. And they're hooked up to that IV and they just stay there. It's just not good for several reasons. It's not that it's morally bad, but it's not helpful to your body. To illustrate this point, I would like to refer to one of my favorite children's books. If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. We all know this book. We all love it. But the biggest risk with epidurals is the idea of the intervention roller coaster. That's kind of one of the number one reasons why natural birth advocates say not to get an epidural. Not because there's some weird hippie, not because they think that you're more of a woman if you go naturally. It's because of this intervention roller coaster, which we're going to talk about. So just to refresh your memory, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for a glass of milk. And if he gets a glass of milk, that dirty little guy is going to ask you for a whole bunch of other stuff. And it just goes on and on. And by the end of the book, this poor little mother is just exhausted. Head down, he's tired. So how does that relate to birth? Let's talk about it. If you give a girl an epidural, she'll have an IV to go with it. If she gets an IV to increase her blood volume so that her blood pressure doesn't drop along with that of the baby's, then her naturally occurring hormones that are putting her body into labor will be diluted. Along with diluted hormones, she will be hooked up to an IV, which it just makes it harder to move. Yes, you can get IV stands, but then you have this thing attached to you. It's just kind of a drag. If those hormones are diluted, then her labor may slow down, especially in the second stage, not to mention the fact that she is numb and typically just can't move. There are such things as walking epidurals, but I really haven't heard about that happening a lot. It's usually more on the I was too numb side. If labor slows, she may be told that her body is not progressing and that she now needs Pitocin, a synthetic oxytocin, which will cause her body to contract. And now she most likely thinks that her body has failed and is broken and it's her fault. If she has Pitocin, her body will begin to contract. Pitocin, because it is synthetic and for other reasons I don't know, causes very, very, very intense contractions and sometimes doesn't give space in between. Because the mother is numb, she might not feel this, but the baby is feeling the intensity and typically doesn't catch a break. If her baby is feeling the intensity from man-made contractions, along with the baby's blood supply being compromised because their mother is on their back, the baby may now be in fetal distress. If the baby's in fetal distress, then the doctor might suggest a C-section. If the baby isn't in fetal distress, but the labor is too slow, or the mother is now so numb that she can no longer bear down properly and urge the baby out, then vacuum extraction, forceps, and episiotomies are more likely to be used. So do you see what I mean about the intervention roller coaster? And this starts sooner than the epidural. This starts with how we view labor, how we view our bodies, how we view due dates. Due dates are just a guess. I have friends who say, well, I never progress. And I say, well, according to what time schedule? According to your due date, which can be off by 2 weeks. It's just something to think about. Because if you get an epidural, then you have to get a catheter because you are numb and you feel those sensations. So you can't get up and walk to the bathroom. So you do have to have a catheter. Epidurals cause your temperature to rise, slowly but surely. So if you get an epidural placed early and you don't have a baby for about 24 hours, then your temperature is going to rise so much so that you now probably have a fever. A fever in a mother is also a sign of an infection like sepsis in a baby. But there's no way of telling what that fever is officially from. They don't know. It could be sepsis or it could just be the epidural. But because of liability and to be safe, when that baby is born, they have to be given antibiotics just in case. Even though sepsis is extremely rare, and most of the time it's the epidural that is causing the fever. Didn't know that, but learned that. And though very rare, they can happen, things like spinal headaches. Now, sometimes the pros of an epidural can outweigh the cons or the risks. Sometimes if the mom is so anxious and so fearful, then that fight or flight's going to kick in and her organs are just going to kind of stop working. So sometimes an epidural can help a mom feel calm and relaxed enough to give birth. Isn't that right? So if she feels calm and relaxed, then her chance of labor progressing are better. Number 2, for long, long labors. I knew a girl who was in labor for 2 days at home. Went in, was exhausted. They said, let's give you an epidural so you could relax. And he was sunny side up, and that's why it was taking so long. So she was really tired. In that situation, she preferred having an epidural so she could rest and let labor progress. And 3, they're good if you do end up having an emergency C-section, because then you're already numbed up. You don't have to get put out. You still want an epidural? Here's how to make it work for you. Wait till you are at least, oh my gosh. Wait till you are at least a 6, I'd suggest. Or wait till you're more further along. And in that way, your hormones have done a lot of the work already. You can change positions even if you're numb. You can change from side to side, incline the bed so you're sitting up. I believe that you need to be able to move so that you can help your body bring your baby to you. But before that, you need to change the way that you were thinking about birth. It doesn't have to be scary. Have support. Hire a doula. Take husband-coached labor classes. Make sure that he's involved. You need to have support because, like I said, no matter how much you read in that moment, especially for first-time moms, it's extremely overwhelming. There's a lot going on. But if you have everyone on board, then you'll be able to let go and give in